Bonjour l'Afrique du Sud, this is Sports on Today. Welcome back to eNCA. The FIA has found F1 champions, that's Red Bull, guilty of breaching its 2021 budget cap. The cap is intended to limit spending to make the sport viable and also to close a competitive gap between big and small teams. Vic Maharaj from Motorsport South Africa joins us to unpack this and more on other news in Motorsport South Africa as well. Good afternoon, Vic. Great to be talking to you. The FIA has the spending cap in place. The rules say the team in contravention of this rule will lose points. And we know Red Bull are guilty, but they will not be punished with the loss of the title, or could they?
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So I think the reality is what we've got to really emphasize at the moment is that the FIA has found that Red Bull plus Aston Martin were in breach of the FIA budget cap regulations. Remember, each team has got to spend up to a maximum of $145 million. And there's a 5% sort of leeway in terms of a procedural or a minor cost cap breach error. So in terms of the regulations, what we understand is that Red Bull is guilty of what they term as a minor cost cap breach, and Aston Martin of a procedural breach. But Aston Martin effectively still complied with the regulation of $145 million. So I think really, if you pardon the pun, the million-dollar question is how much of or what number is the Red Bull racing team guilty of a cost cap breach? You know, we've had lots of speculation from Ferrari and Mercedes that essentially says that up to about $7 million, because you allowed that 5%, is pretty much equivalent to about half a second in terms of lap time. If you look at the events of last year, Abu Dhabi, etc., that half a second was the difference between winning or losing the championship. In saying all of that, we still got to work out, and the FIA has got to come out with what they suggest would be potential penalties in terms of the transgression from Red Bull. We think potentially it would be a points loss for the Constructors' Championship. It could be a fine that would be applicable to Red Bull Racing, and probably at a outcome could also be a warning. However, I think a lot of the motorsport world, Formula One fans, are looking to see how severe the FIA is going to be in terms of what it will basically hand out as a punishment to Red Bull Racing. Just one other point to kind of emphasize is that there's a constant to and fro between the teams and the FIA. So I don't think that this is a potential finalization of the matter. I think Red Bull is quite clear that they've felt that they've made the cost cap levels. The FIA has a different opinion, so I do think there will be a procedure that's in place from the FIA to investigate this and come out with a finding as soon as possible. I think us as F1 fans and fans of motorsport all over the world, we want this to be resolved as soon as possible.
Vic, if the FIA cannot take these tough decisions, should this rule be abolished then? I mean, if they cannot enforce it on the same teams?
I think that is really the acid test that we are all waiting to see. If the FIA doesn't enforce this stringently, it could possibly, as Toto Wolff or Ferrari have said, the end of the actual cost cap. I think that would be a travesty, because the cost cap is there to try and narrow the field between the back markers at this moment in time, say Williams, to the front of the field. I think the new regulations and the new cars and the new cost cap levels for 2022 has shown that it is possible. And over time and over a couple of years, we will see the field narrow up and close up. And that's what we want as F1 fans. We want close racing. We want the racing to go down to the last race of the championship where we are unsure as to who's going to win the championship, obviously in less controversial circumstances. So it's going to be a very interesting test for the FIA and its new leadership as to how they implement these cost cap regulations.
Well, Vic Maharaj, thank you so much for your time. We have run out of time. I would have loved to get your opinions on the South African Grand Prix possibly returning in 2024. And, of course, the victory of Sheldon van der Linde, who won the DTM title, of course, on Sunday in Germany. Thank you very much for your time. That was Motorsport South Africa's Vic Maharaj.